There are cars that are engineered, and then there are cars that are dreamed. The Lamborghini Miura was dreamed first, not by executives, not by market research, but by three young men who refused to believe that their job description defined their imagination. At Automobili Lamborghini, the mission was clear: build grand touring cars, fast, refined, comfortable machines meant to rival Ferrari on the road, not the racetrack. At the top stood Ferruccio Lamborghini, a tractor magnate turned car manufacturer. He had no interest in racing. He famously told his engineers that racing was expensive and unnecessary. But inside the factory, something was stirring. Three young engineers, Paolo Dallara, Paolo Stanzani, and Bob Wallace. They were in their 20s. They were restless, and after hours, when most of the factory had gone quiet, they began sketching something radical. A mid-engine V12 road car. At the time, mid-engine layouts were for race cars only. Formula 1 prototypes, machines meant for circuits, not city streets. Building one for the road felt almost rebellious. They named the chassis P400, posterior, 4 liters. It was their secret. When Ferruccio eventually saw the bare chassis, he didn't explode. He paused. He saw risk. He saw cost. He saw instability. But he also saw youth. And perhaps he remembered what it felt like to be underestimated. He allowed it to continue, cautiously, not because he believed it would change the world, but because he believed in giving talented young men a chance. That decision changed automotive history. The chassis was radical, but it needed a body. They turned to Carrozzeria Bertone, where a 27-year-old designer named Marcello Gandini was working on the Nuccio Bertone. Gandini didn't design a car. He designed a silhouette that would define a genre. Low like a panther, wide like it was stretching, with headlights framed by delicate eyelashes. Something almost human. The Miura didn't look engineered. It looked alive. When the chassis debuted at the 1965 Turin Motor Show, without a body, orders were already being placed. People bought it before it was even complete. That's how strong the idea was. When the finished Miura appeared at the Geneva Motor Show in 1966, the reaction wasn't just excitement, it was disbelief. Crowds surrounded it. Journalists stared at it. Competitors quietly recalculated their future. This was not just another fast car. This was the birth of the modern supercar. Before the Miura, there were sport cars. After the Miura, there were supercars. The Miura's V12 was mounted transversely sideways to save space. The engine and the gearbox shared the same lubrication system in early versions, which was clever but also problematic. It ran hot, it could be temperamental, and at high speeds, the front end could feel light, almost floating. Test driver Bob Wallace later admitted the car was exciting, sometimes too exciting, but that unpredictability gave it character. It wasn't sterile, it demanded attention. It felt mechanical in a way modern cars rarely do. Miura came from a famous Spanish fighting bull breeder, Don Eduardo Miura. Ferruccio Lamborghini loved bullfighting symbolism. The car carried that aggression in its stance. It wasn't delicate. Even though it was beautiful, it looked like it could charge. Early Miuras had tiny eyelashes around the headlights. Later models removed them. Owners today argue about which version is more pure, but those eyelashes gave it something rare. Expression. The car didn't look angry, it looked aware. By the time the Miura SV arrived in 1971, the car had evolved. Wider rear track, improved lubrication, more power, more stability. It became closer to what the engineers originally imagined, but by then, something else was happening. Lamborghini as a company was struggling financially. The Miura had created a legend, but legends are expensive to build. Production ended in 1973. Only 764 Miuras were ever made. That's not many for something that changed everything. Dallara would go on to found his own company, shaping racing history. Stanzani would continue engineering excellence. Wallace would forever be remembered as the man who tamed the beast. Gandini would later design the Countach, another revolution. But that's a story for another time. But the Miura was the moment they were young, the moment they were bold, the moment they didn't yet know limits. And maybe that's why it still feels different. The Miura appeared in the opening scene of the Italian Job, a bright orange Miura driving through the Alps. It wasn't just transport, it was art in motion. It became a symbol of the 1960s optimism, wealth, freedom, risk, beauty. But underneath that glamour was something fragile. A small Italian company, a handful of engineers, a dream that almost didn't happen. The Miura wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. It wasn't even logical. But it was brave. And bravery is rare in engineering. It proved that youth inside a company can change its destiny. It proved that beauty can redefine performance. It proved that sometimes the future begins after hours, when no one is watching. Today, when you see a Miura resting under soft museum lights, you are not just looking at a car. You are looking at late night in Santa Agata, pencil sketches on drafting tables, a founder choosing not to say no, young engineers daring to build something unnecessary but unforgettable. The Miura didn't just raise the bar, it moved the bar somewhere no one else had thought to look. And maybe that's why it still feels alive, because it wasn't built by a corporation, it was built by belief.